The first time we use Git, we have to specify a few configuration settings. We have to specify our name, email, default editor, and how Git should handle line endings. We can specify these configuration settings at 3 different levels. At the very top, we have the system level. The settings that we have here apply to all users of the current computer. Below this level, we have the global level. The settings here apply to all repositories of the current user. And below this level, we have the local level. The settings here apply to the current repository or the repository in the current folder. So we can have different settings for different repositories or different projects. So here in the terminal window, we type git config, then we type -- global to specify the level at which we are defining these settings. Next, we should specify the setting we want to configure. So user.name. Here we type double quotes and type our name. Now, the reason we're adding double quotes is because we have a space in this value, okay? So that was the first setting. Once again, git config -- global. This time we're going to set user.email. Now, because we don't have a space in emails, here we don't need double quotes. So let's add our email. All right. Next, we need to specify our default editor. If we don't set this on Mac, by default, Git is going to use Vim, which is a scary editor. A lot of people are freaked out by it. In this course, I'm going to use Visual Studio Code or VS Code. You can use any editor that you prefer. But if you want to follow along with me, I highly encourage you to download the latest version of Visual Studio Code from code.visualstudio.com. Now, on this machine, I've added Visual Studio Code to my path, so I can open it from any folder on my machine without specifying the full path. So if I type code, here's VS Code. If this doesn't work on your machine, you have to troubleshoot the issue yourself. Depending on your operating system, there are different instructions for adding VS Code to your path. So back to the terminal, let's set the default editor. Git config -- global. The setting we want to configure is core.editor. Once again, we need double quotes because here we're going to have a space. The value for this setting is code space -- wait. With the wait flag, we tell the terminal window to wait until we close the new VS Code instance. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now, all these configuration settings are stored in a text file. We can edit that file using our default editor, in this case, VS Code. So we can type git config -- global -e. This will open our default editor to edit all the global settings. Let me show you. So, all right, here's our configuration file. You can see the full path to this file on the top. The name of this file is git config. Now in this file, we have different sections. So we have the user section with 2 settings, name and email. We have the core section with these 2 settings and so on. Now back in the terminal window, you can see the terminal is waiting for us to close VS Code. So let's close this window. Now we are back in the terminal and we can execute the next command. Next, we're going to configure how Git should handle end of lines. This is a very important setting that a lot of people miss. So on Windows, end of lines are marked with 2 special characters, carriage return and line feed. On Mac and Linux systems, end of lines are indicated with line feed. So that means if we don't handle end of lines properly, we're going to run into some weird issues down the road. To prevent this, we have to configure a property called core.autocrlf, which is short for carriage return line feed. So let me walk you through a real scenario. Let's say we have 2 people here, John and Julie, working with the same repository. John uses a Windows machine, Julie uses a Mac. As I told you, on Windows, end of lines are marked with carriage return and line feed. So when John wants to check in his code into the repository, Git should remove the carriage return character from end of lines. Similarly, when he checks out his code from the repository, Git should update end of lines and add the carriage return character. To achieve this behavior, we should set this property to true. On the other hand, when Julie checks out the code, she doesn't want the carriage return character. So Git shouldn't touch end of lines. However, if carriage return is accidentally added to end of lines, perhaps because of the editor that Julie is using, Git should remove it when storing the code in the repository. To achieve this behavior, we should set this property to input, which means Git should only modify end of lines when storing code in the repository. So back in the terminal, we type git config -- global core.autocrlf. If you're on Windows, you should set this to true. If you're on Mac or Linux, You should set this to input.